Hi, I'm Zim Sherman, Product Engineer and Director of Scienterra Ltd. For 12 years, Scienterra has produced radiation dosimeters for research. This has connected the dots between radiation exposure, behavior, and health. We hope that our new product, called Waveband, will change the way we manage personal radiation exposure. Waveband is a group of products designed for radiation exposure research. A wearable device measures 6 types of radiation and relays data through a smartphone app to a cloud database. Data are automatically organized in the database and made available to researchers through a web portal. Everything is secure and easily scalable for big data. Waveband's wearable device measures UVA, UVB, blue, green, red, and broadband white and IR. There's also an accelerometer for physical activity and sleep. The app displays exposure history, records clothing and sunscreen use, monitors compliance, and provides reinforcing messages to guide behavior. There are educational features like a real-time irradiance meter and localized UV forecasts. The web portal allows the researcher to search and organize data with tools for visualization, analysis, and exporting, making Waveband a truly integrated end-to-end monitoring tool from exposure to analysis. Waveband's name stems from WUV, or WV, but the word waveband applies to any collection of wavelengths bounded by lower and upper limits. So which wavelengths are we interested in? Our world is filled with light, awash in radiation. As the sun's energy passes through the Earth's atmosphere, various gases absorb certain wavelengths, leaving us with this distribution at sea level. If you add all the energy under this curve, you get about 1,000 watts per square meter. Of course, some of this is radiation we can see. Our eyes are quite sensitive to green light at 550 nanometers, but their sensitivity declines in other colors in a bell-shaped curve called the photopic eye response. This is called a response curve, and it ranges from 1 to 0, where 1 means most sensitive and 0 means we can't see it at all. The photopic eye response defines what we call visible light. Beyond red is infrared, or IR. About half the solar radiation is in this region. Below violet is ultraviolet, or UV. Only about 5% of solar radiation is UV. Sunlight at sea level contains 2 types of UV. Both kinds are carcinogenic, and each affects our skin, but in different ways. UVA is for aging. UVA rays penetrate our skin, causing it to thicken and wrinkle over time. UVB is for burning. Excessive UVB burns our skin. Capillaries expand, bringing blood to heal the damaged cells. This reddening of the skin is called erythema, and it indicates that cell damage has occurred. Because we can easily see erythema when it happens, scientists have studied it quite a bit. Just as our eyes are more sensitive to green, our skin is more sensitive to the shorter wavelengths of UVB. This response curve is called the erythemal action spectrum. It's very similar to the action spectrum that causes DNA damage, and also similar to the action spectrum that triggers vitamin D synthesis, so this range of wavelengths is a good one to study. The erythemal action spectrum is usually viewed like this on a logarithmic scale, but we could view it on a linear scale like this and compare it to the photopic eye response. This makes it look much sharper. So how much radiation does there need to be to cause erythema? To see how much erythemal radiation there is in sunlight, we consider the solar spectrum and the erythemal action spectrum together. At wavelengths where one is large, the other is small, and vice versa, so the product of the two never gets very big. In space, there are about 10 watts per square meter of erythemal radiation, shaded here in red. But as sunlight descends through the atmosphere, most of the erythemally active radiation is blocked by ozone, so less than 2% of it reaches us here at sea level. When we graph it, it looks small. Very small. This graph represents a midsummer day in Phoenix, with a UV index of 10. It doesn't look like much, but this tiny proportion of solar irradiance will cause first-degree sunburn in just 10 minutes. All UV is carcinogenic. To envision the scale of this problem, in New Zealand and Australia in 2020, there were 670,000 new cases of skin cancer, causing more than 3,500 deaths. Our healthcare systems spent $1.1 billion for diagnosis and treatment. It is believed that at least 98% of these cancers could have been avoided by reducing UV exposure. There is obvious concern about UV, but 95% of the sun's radiation is visible in infrared. There's a growing stack of literature about how these wavelengths affect biology. Here are just a few examples, together with their action spectra. Blue light between 420 and 530 nanometers disrupts production of melatonin, an essential hormone that regulates sleep. Artificial lighting can reduce melatonin levels by 40 to 80%. Photochemistry involving the vitamin A1 opsin has a similar response. There's a phototoxic blue light hazard between 410 and 480 nanometers. This light causes lesions on the retinal tissue. It's been implicated as a possible cause of macular degeneration. There are also absorption spectra of various chromophores and variants of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a close molecular relative of chlorophyll, which drives photosynthesis, arguably the most important biological process on the planet. The activity spectrum of photosynthesis is rather messy, so plant biologists simplify it to this because, well, they're plant biologists. They call this PAR, or photosynthetically active radiation. Our new Waveband wearable device has 6 independent photodiodes that measure UVB, UVA, blue, green, red, and broadband radiation that includes visible and near-infrared. The UVA sensor covers a broad portion of the UVA band and excludes all visible light. The UVB spectral response closely mimics the erythemal action spectrum, DNA damage spectrum, and vitamin D synthesis spectrum, all very important when measuring UV exposure. Waveband's blue channel strongly resembles the melatonin suppression action spectrum and the vitamin A1 opsin template. It's also a reasonable indicator for the blue light hazard function. The green channel is a near-perfect match for the photopic eye response. By mixing the blue, green, and red channels, Waveband provides an estimate of PAR, and if you want to measure the actual action spectrum of photosynthesis, we can do that too. For the really big picture, the broadband sensor spans the visible and near-infrared regions, capturing about 60% of all solar radiation. Waveband was developed as a tool for research. When we began this project, we asked scientists and policymakers what they wanted. Here's what they asked for. The app displays real-time irradiance, exposure history, and UV forecasts. Users can record their sunscreen and protective clothing use using a journal or diary function. For blind studies, data displays and interactions can be hidden. The app engages the user with personalized feedback and messaging. Movements can be tracked if the user grants permission to use the phone's GPS. If the user forgets to wear the Waveband device, the app reminds them. The device counts steps, measures cadence, and reports accelerometer metrics for physical activity and sleep quality, using algorithms from the GGIR scientific analysis software. This software is a trusted tool for accelerometry and physical activity studies. A request for data is sent from the database to the app, and from there to the Waveband wearable device. The data packet is returned over Bluetooth to the app, which relays it to the database where it can be accessed by authorized researchers via the web portal. All transfers are fully secure. The database provides search tools, data visualization, processing, archiving, and export options to the web portal. In the other direction, the database manages calibration histories and operational settings. It can even send firmware updates. From the web portal, if a researcher sends a message or changes an instrument setting, these propagate forward to apps and wearables. Researchers can also define rules that control automated notifications. For example, the app might display different behavioral reinforcement messages depending on the day's exposure. These rules and messages are dynamic and can be adjusted on the fly. For 10 years, our UV sensing technology has been trusted by more than 120 scientists in 26 countries. We're constantly improving this technology through continued research and development. The UVB sensor's match to the erythemal action spectrum has been verified by independent laboratories. In these tests from 2014, the World Calibration Center for UV Radiation in Davos, Switzerland, quantified the instrument's measurement uncertainty as plus or minus 8%. Another round of testing is planned for later this year. The new design is O-ring sealed. A coin cell battery is expected to last about 5 months. There are so many uses for a system like Waveband. We hope it will enable new and innovative research and become an effective tool for health agencies, dermatologists, industry regulators, and more. By simultaneously monitoring a wide range of radiation bands and behaviors, Waveband can help explore exposure patterns, eliminate uncertainties, track at-risk populations, perform interventions, and reduce the rate of skin cancer. Our goal at Scienterra has always been to support and enable scientific research. We are so deeply honored to be helping in this vitally important work. I'd like to thank the conveners for accepting this presentation, and I'd like to thank Spark64 and Callahan Innovation for their hard work and support. Special thanks to all of the researchers across the world who really made this project come alive. Please contact me directly at zim@scienterra.com or visit our website, www.scienterra.com. Thank you.